Hello and welcome to the latest Squadpod In Conversation. This evening we are going to be joined by the lovely Natali Simmonds. I'm just setting up for her to join us, and then we will. Hi Vic, just waiting for Natali to join. I can't seem to add her. I don't know if you can have a look. I normally can just search in the add person, but there's nobody not there. I wonder if she follows us. Okie dokie, I should be able to add her now. There we go. There we go. So hopefully you will be there.
Oh, I am. Hi. I think my camera's facing the wrong way. There I am.
That's okay. I'm going to move myself down because I'm normally too high and now I'm too low. Honestly, every time. And then everything collapses and then I end up on these awful, oh goodness me. Is that, oh, can you see half of my head?
I can only see your eyes.
You can only see my eyes, yeah. We can't see. Oh, right. There we go.
Put my light on.
I'm going to put the camera up.
There we go, everybody. That's my flattery light. I've had 4 hours sleep, so I need all the help I can get tonight.
Oh no, okay, there you go. Look, that's what happens when you can put the chair up. Hi Nick. Hi everybody. Sorry, we were just making ourselves look respectable. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of sleep either. Was it because it was too hot?
No, it was because I was randomly in Belgium at a rock concert. I went to see I went to see Bruce Springsteen and got home at 3:30 this morning. So that makes me sound way more exciting than I am. I thought I could manage it, but I'm flagging now because I'm an hour ahead of you, so it's about 8:30 here.
Oh no, mine was just that I was boring and I couldn't go to sleep. It was too hot.
It's really hot, isn't it? I'm sweating here as well. My office is like burning.
Oh, thanks for coming along this evening and everybody who's joining us. Yeah, rock and roll. Yeah, she's definitely got a much more rock and roll lifestyle than I have. I was just in bed. How was Bruce? Was he good?
He was, but Jack Johnson and Simply Red were also playing, and I love Jack Johnson. Simply Red I'm indifferent to, and they were both really good. I think Bruce has been he's 73 and he's been on a tour since February, and it sounded like he sounded really knackered, to be honest. I didn't think he was going to make it all the way through. I was like, Jesus, how's he still doing this?
Yeah,
no, it was good though. It was pretty good.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing how I just don't know how they do it every night. It's just like, I mean, I know they have like, nice trailers and all that sort of stuff, but it must be really exhausting.
I can't even have a late night every night, let alone be on stage singing to like 70,000 people in different countries every other day now.
Anyway, we digress. Hi everybody, everybody's joining, so we're getting lots of people joining us. So this evening we're delighted that Natali has come along to talk about her fabulous pink book. Good.
Yeah, that's the proof. This is what this was that's the before, that's the advance, and this is what it looks like in the shops now.
That's interesting, isn't it? I wonder they went really.
Yeah, that was like an eye-catching proof that's sent out, and then everyone's like, "Oh, your book looks completely different." I'm like, "Yep, it's all hot and heat wavy."
It is hot and heat wavy, which is quite lucky, really, because it is hot about hot and heat wavy. Oh, and Vic's saying that you've got a Twitter chat with us tomorrow as well, so that's probably with Vic, I expect. So, would you like to tell us a little bit about this book?
Yeah, so Good Girls Die Last is my debut thriller, and it's a real feminist exploration about female rage. It's not my first book. I've written lots of fantasy in the past. This is my debut thriller, so it's been really exciting to write. And it's about a 29-year-old woman who's half English, half Spanish, like me, living in London. Her day has gone terribly. She's got issues with her relationships. with her family, with her job. She has to get back to Spain to her sister's wedding, and her mum's very ill. And she needs to get to Spain via the City of London airport, which is, half an hour away from central London where she works, except due to the world's biggest heat wave in London, it's like 41 degrees, just a little bit more than it was last year, actually. I wrote this before the heat wave hit last year. All the London transport grinds to a halt, so she has to walk, which would normally not be an issue because it's only 3 hours away. But not only does she encounter a number of obstacles, but there's a serial killer on the loose. So it's a race against time.
Quite a lot going on.
There's a lot going on internally as well as externally, but the whole book takes place predominantly within 48 hours. It's very, very fast paced.
Very, very fast paced, and we'll come on to that later because I've got a question about that. So you said you wrote it before the heat wave last year. So yes. What sort of inspired you to sort of tackle this sort of subject? Because I mean, it's very current. I mean, there's a lot of subjects in there that are very, very topical. Not only the heat wave, but the sort of sexual assault, and there's women being treated, like we're treated. Sorry, men, if you're watching, but it's true.
Not all men, not all men.
Yeah. No, not all men. No, actually, that's not.
Just say that, then we don't get bad comments.
Yeah.
What inspired me? It was, I started to write it in 2021. I've always wanted to write something serious and hard-hitting. I've been writing a lot of fantasy before then that had a feminist angle to it. I've always written really strong, complex women because I guess I am one. And I come from a long line of very strong women. So that always comes through anyway. But I wanted to write a very topical, hard-hitting book. And I didn't really have the confidence until I had a few books under my belt. And then in 2021, with Sarah Everard and everything that happened with her, that was all in the news. And then we were in the middle of COVID. It was the second summer. I was coming back from Spain. We were driving, actually, so it was quite a long journey. And I was on Twitter, and everybody was upset. I mean, there's a lot of Me Too going on, and with the murders that were happening in London, women were rightfully scared and angry and frustrated. And somebody said on Twitter, it's about time we had a feminist falling down. Now, Falling Down is, a real favourite movie of mine with Michael Douglas. Yeah. It's an 80s movie where he's stuck in a traffic jam in LA in a heat wave. He decides to just walk, and then it's all little things that just send him over the edge, although he's a bit of a bad guy anyway. And I thought that is how a lot of women feel, where it's just you just don't know what that final straw is going to be that's going to make you snap, and you're not quite sure what's going to happen when you do snap. And I really wanted to explore that. So I was inspired by real life events, and I didn't know there was going to be a heat wave a year later. The book had already been signed. This book got me an agent and got me a good deal with Headline. And then when the heat wave happened, originally my editor said, it's a bit apocalyptic. 41 in London, that's never going to happen. Like, change it to like 35. It's hot enough. Like, okay, then fine. And then it did happen, so we had to change it back again, which was very fun. Yeah. So a bit of climate change in there. Not that I, talk about that much, but yeah.
It does sort of feel a bit apocalyptic, even though it isn't really. I think because so much happens, and she is sort of trudging her way across London with her suitcase and her, it's almost like, in a way, she is sort of, leaving her. Well, I mean, it's really difficult because I don't want to give too much away if you haven't read it. But basically, one of the reasons she's not having a good day is because everything in her life is falling to pieces. Her home life, her job, everything. There's nothing. Sorry, there's a tractor just going by. That's because I live in the country, and it's tractor time.
And all my entire family upstairs, including my mother-in-law that's staying with me. I was like, everybody out. I don't want to hear anyone. I'm live. I can't really do anything about the combine harvesters and tractors that go up and down the road outside my house. Sorry. Anyway, so it does feel a bit sort of that, the sort of, when I think there's a point where when she breaks into the shop, and into the shop or the doorway, and has to
let nature take
that. Yeah, so next to the kebab shop, it's like an unused bit of land, just so because she's absolutely desperate for pee, and unlike men, we can't pee against the wall quietly, so she had to find an unused bit of land behind a fence to just wee. Yeah, and it's all just very raw and very horrible, but every woman everywhere at some point,
absolutely,
has had to find somewhere to wee that's not perfect. And I really wanted to kind of add that rawness, that reality of what it is sometimes to be a woman in the heat.
I think that's the thing that comes across. That people are saying, they really loved it, and I think Em is a very complex character, but actually I think all of us can see something of ourselves in her. We've all had bad days at work, we've all had bad days at home. She's just having a bad day, full stop. And that sort of culmination of things and the heat, because we all know that heat makes us really bad tempered.
And she bumps into Rose. She meets a friend, if you like, along the way, and Rose is hungover and having the world's longest walk of shame. Two things that you're just not particularly going to be in a good mood about, let alone in 40 degrees when you can't even get a bus. Yeah.
Did she sort of, so with Em, when you decided you were going to write the book, did she come quite easily, or did she come later, or did she come as you wrote, or did you sort of have an idea that you wanted a strong woman who was going through a lot of stuff?
She came fully formed. The whole story did to some extent, because I've written, as I said before this, I'd written a lot of fantasy, and you go wide with that. It's world building, go back in time, and you go off on tangents and multiple points of view. But with Em, it's like one point of view, first person. She has to get from A to B. And there is only one route.
Yeah.
I know the route. I know London very well. I'm from there. So it was quite, you had to go deeper as opposed to going wider. And I really had to dig deep as to who she was. And because of that constant theme of suppressed female rage, I wanted to give her a backstory where that was also reflected. Yeah. And I wanted to give her a foil character in Rose that's completely the opposite. And in a way, I think Em and Rose are all of us. We've all got a fiery side, and we've a confident side, and we've all got a more behave yourself, because if you're good, nice things will happen to you side. And I think they learn from one another a bit along that journey. But yeah, she did come to me pretty fully formed. The characters changed. Paul changed. Rose changed. There were other characters that got taken out, but Em stayed pretty much the same. Was she fun to write? Were you able to sort of put in some of your, everybody says that, some of you have to go into the book because you're writing it, so it's inevitable that happens. But with that you're sort of almost, you're inside her head, aren't you? You're listening to what she's thinking, and I think that you become really sort of entwined with her because of that. Did you find that she sort of, you were crossing over with her, and like you were thinking, I think I'm more like Rose. I had more fun writing Rose because she's like a little firecracker. She's a real cow, and I quite like that. But with Em, I did find myself quite frustrated with her. Because when you create character arc, you have to have them at a starting point that's not ideal, and you need to show them getting stronger. So to begin with, I was frustrated, and I was like, just change your bloody shoes, will you? You're walking around with a suitcase of clothing, just stop somewhere and put some shorts on. So it was frustrating to write, because for obvious reasons for the plot, you have to drag these situations out. And I really wanted her to just say out loud what she was thinking and feeling, but obviously she doesn't until she hits rock bottom. And once her back's against the wall, then that's it. And she finally finds her confidence, and she's got nothing left to lose. But she's a bit of me. All the things that happen in that book, in one way or another, has happened either to me or somebody I know. There isn't a lot. I wouldn't say there's on-page abuse for a lot of people that are worried about like rape scenes or sex. None of it is actually on the page. There's abuse, and there's references to abuse, but I very purposely didn't make it that black and white. I purposely didn't want it to be like, oh, she's been raped or she's been systematically sexually abused. It's just really very
little drips,
small, but those microaggressions that still matter.
Because I think what's her boss, Paul? Was it Paul?
Paul.
He, like, that's sort of she goes in, she sort of, if you look how women are treated, and I said, you know, not all men treat women like that, but she's sort of sexually harassed at work, and it gets turned around on her, and everybody, and you think, well, why do they all believe him? Why do they? Because he's manipulated them to believe, and we don't know the reasons why that he's manipulated them, but he has, and that's, you know, that's how it is. But I think
he believes it himself. He
yeah,
genuinely believes it himself. He believes that, you know, it's a relationship. He believes he hasn't done anything wrong. I don't think abusers, not many, go out to purposely, you know, unless they get a thrill from knowing what they're doing is horrific. A lot of the time they genuinely believe that he believes that he's a minority, and I think my minority like she is, they've got so much in common. He believes that she's kissed him back because, and she does say no, but because she's not kicking and screaming, as most women in those situations, because the abuse of power wouldn't, he just convinces himself that this is, you know, mutual attraction, obviously.
yeah. Obviously it's not. Did you sort of, that sort of, I mean, I imagine it's not uncommon, is it? You know, you read it in the papers every day about, you know, women who experience situations at work where, you know, that their boss or another member of staff will be sort of use that power over them to, you know, to either, you know, persuade them to do things or not, or yeah. So did you, when you were doing your research for the book, was that something that you sort of looked into, or you know, was that something that you...
I didn't even have to research, because, as I said, it's based on 100% everything that I've been told and my friends have told me. And since the book's come out, I've had so many messages from people I know and don't know, women in their 60s and 70s that are like just telling me their stories because they feel seen. I mean, I didn't have that at work to that extent, but on my first ever day at work, I was 18 years old, nervous, sitting there, waiting to be told what to do, or, you know, I wasn't very autonomous. And my chair broke, my office chair broke, and I remember saying to my boss, who was going through a divorce, and he felt really old at the time, but he was younger than I am now, he was 30, and I said, oh, my chair's broken, and he said loudly, it's all right, love, you can sit on my lap for the rest of the day, and everyone laughed. And I was 18, he was in his 30s, and it was meant to be funny, like, oh, come sit on my lap, and just little tiny,
like, no, you're free to go away.
Yeah, and it wasn't really until the whole Me Too movement that I started to think back and go, oh, that wasn't funny. And I laughed along at that, and he wouldn't have known that I was actually really intimidated and scared and
frightened.
Violence. And, you know, I have been attacked. I was attacked on the tube. I had a guy break into my room once when I was traveling. So, like, I've had more serious situations, and I don't really know anyone that has them. I've got friends that have been, you know, date raped. So that's the sad thing about it. I really have to go very far to get my story. No,
that is, I mean, it's sad, but a story that needs telling, isn't it? And the book, as we go through the book, it becomes quite claustrophobic, isn't it? Because you've got that heat, you know, you're listening, you're reading her as she's sort of going through the motions of whatever she's going through at that particular, you know, there's the point where she wants to get into the flat and she can't get into the flat, and then that bit frustrated me, because then later on you find out that she could get into the flat.
And that's me, but by the way, that's the kind of stupid thing I do continuously in my life. Don't look through my bag properly and make an assumption and go off and have these massive, like, dramas, and, you know, the keys were in my pocket. That is the kind of stuff that happens to her.
Yeah. She I mean, everything that goes wrong could go wrong on this day. And you said that, you know, it's very much of you. You know, I think we've all had days where we've just literally gone, but I mean, she literally takes it to another level. And as we go on, she meets Rose, things happen, lots of things happen, and then, you know, something big happens, and then that sort of gripping, that fast paced, it must have been, was it, because as you read it, you're almost galloping as you go through, as the pace picks up. Was that like for you when you were writing? Were you sort of having to gallop as you wrote?
Yeah, I mean, I have a very stringent way of writing, or at least I did with this book. I started off with a very strong premise, and I felt very positive that it was a book that was going to be easy to sell and get an agent with, because it was a very, very clear pitch. It was falling down with this promising young woman, you know, heat wave in London. A woman has to cross London during a heat wave, and there's a serial killer on the loose. Straight away with that sentence, you know what you're going to get. So I felt very confident that if I just stuck to those key core themes, it was going to speak to a lot of people, but I plotted every chapter. I work to Save the Cat, which is what screenwriters work to as well. So it was very tightly plotted. And because it's a route, because it's like a quest book, she has to get somewhere.
Yeah.
I knew exactly at what point these things had to happen. So, you know, I was able to really plot it and keep that pace. But also, I mean, I'm undiagnosed, but I've got a big family history of ADHD. My brain tends to do 20,000 things at the same time. And I get bored very, very quickly when I read. So I write as if I'm terrified that someone's put the book down. All my books are pretty fast paced because I need to be hooked from the onset.
You don't want to put it down.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have one or two slow chapters. There are a few slow chapters just to let you get your breath back. But if I read a book and there's 3 or 4 long chapters in a row, I'm like, I can't be bothered anymore. So I think I tend to write a bit scared that people are going to get bored.
I really like it because it does really. You don't want it, like you say, you don't want to put it down because you know that there's something else going to happen, and and you don't want to take a breath because actually that breath might be the bit that the next bit could be even more exciting than the last bit. And sorry, tractor again.
I can't hear it. It's fine.
I can't hear. That's okay. I can. So I mean, I think it comes over. It's a bit like when you get the twist, isn't it? Where when there's a twist and you don't see it coming, you don't want the reader to see it coming because otherwise it's not a surprise. And Vicky saying, yeah, it's definitely a one-sitting book. Yeah, I did it in one sitting. It is definitely this is. And one of the things that am I right in saying it's been picked up to be turned into into a TV or film?
TV series, yeah.
And so I could definitely see that, That's so exciting.
Oh, it's an absolute thrill because the book's not even in the shops until Thursday, and we're talking. It's like it literally is my dream come true. And STV are the production company behind Screws and Elizabeth Missing, after award-winning dramas. Don't yet, we're really at the early stages. Screenwriters, nothing's been done yet. There's no platform or anything, but so far so good. And they loved it. And what they liked about it is that they've been wanting a feminist Me Too drama story. But what they liked about this was that I wasn't out there saying, well, in order to get equality, we have to be the same as men, and we have to go out there and be murderous and horrible, and because we don't. Yeah. And most men aren't murderous and horrible, and most men that are murderous and horrible are murderous and horrible to other men. Yeah. Men are scared of men, and women are scared of men. So it's not. That's what I wanted to get across. It's actually not a man-hating book when I say feminist. It's much more holding a mirror up to the reality of being a woman, and that the dirtier, the kind of rawer side of the things we have to put up with on a daily basis that we possibly keep to ourselves.
No, definitely. I mean, I think that was definitely like a breath of fresh air. Like the things that you talked about in the book, that there was no holds barred. Whether you went for it. We had the the ween in the thing. We had descriptions of her sort of underwear as she's desperately
her period. What else could go wrong, and that's happened to every woman at some point, where you're having a really crappy day or a really important day and you start your period, and that never happens in a book, but it's a reality. And in fact, a year after writing this book, I was trying to get to Heathrow, and the tube I was on just stopped and said they weren't going to Heathrow, and I had to get off and get a taxi, and the taxi cost me a fortune, and I had to share it with a complete stranger, and I got to the airport and then they didn't accept my COVID test, so I had to queue up and I was running late. And by the time I got to the gate, my ticket wasn't going through, and they were calling the last ticket. And I remember thinking, my book's not unrealistic.
No.
I am having one of those days where I'm going to miss my flight, even though I gave myself extra time. Everything was going wrong. So, yeah, it's a bit of that.
And I think we've also all had days where, like, we're really miserable for a reason that we don't know. And that anger sort of, and then you get your period. And then you're like, oh, yeah, that's what it is. We were talking about that the other day, and so we said that, like, how no matter how many times you go through that in your life, it still catches you unaware that is going to happen.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And and she she isn't kind to herself at all
No,
in it.
she
She
got a
makes her
lot
life
of
hard, and I think a lot of us, well, I'm sure men included, make their lives hard for themselves by making bad decisions, not saying something, saying too much. And yeah, I mean, you get to half when it is literally halfway, so I plotted it that way, where it's a journey, then it slap bang in the middle of the halfway mark. You're like, what the hell is happening now? And then it all spirals out of control. So yeah, I did that.
because it starts off with her. She's going to, like she said, she's going to see her family. Her mum's ill. Her dad's died previously. We know from the beginning.
Yeah.
And her sister's getting married, and she's giving her sister away. And so that's all. But as we go through, not everything goes wrong, but we also learn more about her past and what's happened and why she's away, and and then that sort of builds. And I think because it's so singularly in her head that I really liked the tweets. So did you want to explain the tweets? The tweets that you have in the book, because I like them.
An example of them in the book, because it was actually really lovely to see how they were printed in the book. So I'm on Twitter a lot. I don't know, I've become a bit addicted to it. But what I like about it is it tends to be a reflection of society as a whole. So when there's a theme or a concern, a global concern or a localized concern, obviously you get your trending topics and stuff. You then have all these complete strangers with completely different points of view, all talking about the same thing. So I figured if there was a heat wave, they'd all be talking about that. And then if there was a serial killer in London during the heat wave, they'd all be talking about it. Then there'd be hashtags. But I wanted to show the different aspects of how misogyny and the patriarchy can affect both men and women, because there are really lovely guys in this book and there are really horrible women as well. It's not just one side.
Yeah.
And Twitter gives you that, because I was never out to have a didactic book. I didn't want to write a book saying women are great and men are awful, and this is what we need to do. I don't know the answer at all.
No.
This book doesn't have any answers. It's just a mirror. It's just a mirror. And I thought having the tweets in there reflecting, she's got her internal turmoil and her immediate external turmoil, but then there's a bigger one with the heat wave and a bigger one with the serial killer. So as temperatures are rising, the tension is rising, not just with her personally, but across the entire city. And the only way I could show that was through tweets. And they look pretty cool in the book there. So for instance, in this case, there's a bit of a dig for the Daily Mail, but I wanted to show how the Guardian was talking about something differently to how the Daily Mail was saying it, and how some people might just put thoughts and prayers, and others are getting really angry, and then they're fighting within themselves. And I thought that was a good reflection of society as a whole, because there's a lot of grey areas with any topic.
I think it was really interesting reading it as well, is that because it is a single person perspective with her, and then to have that as well just sort of broadened it as well, didn't it? And it also sort of showed that like you said, the misogyny, there's a lot of abuse online for women and for men. Some of the trolling that goes on is horrific, really horrific, just because people have a different opinion to what you may have. So I think my Twitter is a bit of an echo chamber. If it comes off, people don't start talking about books, I'm off.
Oh yeah, I've got 5 themes, and to be honest, I teach self-branding anyway. I'll be teaching it at Raindance Film School face to face in London on Sunday. But I teach self-branding, and one of those things is when you're on Twitter or social media, be known for 3 or 4 things. Yeah. Because people follow you for 3 or 4 things, whether they follow you because you talk about books, they follow me because I talk about books, art, feminism, cats, and my kids. They're my 5 things. That's my brand. I have opinions on everything. I just don't get involved in all that stuff because you can't dilute your brand. And I think that's really interesting as well, because our brains, I think I put it in the book, they can only cope with so much. We weren't made to live in, we weren't made to know what everybody in the world was thinking about, or what was happening in the whole world. It's too much. I think that's why there's a whole generation of really stressed young people, because they just, to some extent, know too much about things they can't control. It's not a nice feeling. So you have to kind of create that curated experience online.
That's really
So I'm
interesting.
really
Yeah.
sweating. My office, look, it's very, very, it's very,
It's a heat wave.
it's very reflective of the book, isn't it?
It
So,
is, yeah.
my office is all windows and the sun shines through, so I'm basically sitting in a green.
It's I mean, it's yeah, it's so well. It's I mean, it's very very appropriate considering the book. Do you want to open Can you open a window or anything? Do you want to open a window?
It's open. No, there's nothing more I can do. I'll just fan myself.
Find yourself.
Melt. But yeah,
Yeah,
no,
Vic,
I mean, everything you were saying, yeah, that's exactly it. And I thought Twitter was a really fun way of just expanding on that really a little bit.
yeah. Well, it does, and I think it also is very reactive, isn't it? So as soon as something happens, it's on there. Like literally, no matter no matter what happens in the world, it will be on Twitter, for good or for bad. You know, you've only got to go, okay, what's going on? Right, I can find it. Because years ago, you wouldn't have had that. You would either have had to wait for the news or a newspaper. You know, there was nothing.
Wait a whole day to have an opinion on what's happened.
Yeah.
And that's a really important part, because it starts off with her just typing crap on Twitter and getting horrible responses, and nothing happens, and she's a bit addicted because, you know, she wants that validation. She's pretty insecure. And by the end of it, she's got an entire nation debating on whether she's a savior or a sinner instantly, and knowing where she is, and she, without giving too much away.
I thought, so you said you plotted. So are you? So were you saying you'd written fantasy before as well? And I imagine when you're writing, like you say, worlds and different, you know, that you have to be a plotter because of that, because it's not something that you can just sort of chuck down. But
No.
did you write this is the same in a way? Did you sort of go about it the same way as you wrote fantasy, or did you go about it completely differently?
Oh, I was way more systematic with this one. Really, really systematic about the whole thing. I think thrillers are easier to write like that. With fantasy, it takes a lot longer. I'm still writing fantasy with N.J. Simmonds, and I've got one that's been bubbling away for 4 years. I wrote 140,000 words, flipped it, rewrote it. I'm at 20,000. You know, like, it takes a long time because there's worlds and it's historical research, and they're pretty epic. But with thrillers, yes. By the way, you are getting more thrillers to answer your question. Don't worry. This is me now. Natali Simmonds is going to give you hopefully a thriller every year, and Jake Simmonds will probably give you a fantasy every 3 or 4 years if I can get on with it, because till I can juggle it all. But thrillers, I think, someone has to die, or at least someone has to nearly die. You have to work out how they're going to get killed. You have to work out that it's plausible, and there has to be twists, and the storylines, as I say, it goes a lot deeper and it goes straight. Whereas with fantasy, you go off on tangents. And fantasy I've written both as Cadis Knight and Joe Simmons of series, so you think in a much different in a different way, because you're thinking across 3 whole books or 7 books, whatever the series is. My thrillers are all standalone, so they're much more condensed. And yeah, I'm very, very systematic. So I started with my ideas, I plot them, and I have them all as post-it notes, 1 post-it note per chapter. I have a spreadsheet, I work out how many words per chapter, so I know what I have to do. And then with this one, I wrote it during NaNoWriMo, so I was every morning for 3 hours, 6 till 9 before working. At the time, I was working with Jericho Writers, and I was writing a chapter every morning before work. That's how I got my first draft out really fast. But I'd already written the bullet points of what happens in each chapter. Within that, you can go off on not tangents, but you can pop up. Yeah, the magic happens within those parameters, but at no point are there lulls or things that shouldn't be there.
No, sort of. There's no surprises for you, because you said, like, it's so tightly plotted.
Sometimes I'm surprised by what they say or what might happen. There might be, like, she's in a pub and she meets some horrible guys and she doesn't get to eat her lunch. That may well be my chapter's bullet points, but I don't know what those men are going to do, what they're going to say, what they're going to look like, how she's going to react, quite how bad it's going to be. And they're the surprises that happen to me. But I'm not suddenly like, oh my God, she's going to do this, or this is how it. The ending did change slightly. I can't tell you how, because I'd give it away. But
no, I've got a thing about the ending, because we'll come back to that in a minute. Vicky's saying, did you remove much during the editing?
Yeah, I mean, I so I wrote it all really, really fast. And actually, a good friend of mine, Emma Cooper, who's also a fantastic author, read it, loved it, gave me her feedback. So did Alexandra Christo, another great author. So did Emma Claire Wilson, another great author. 3 completely different genres. And I took in some feedback, some I did, and I changed it. And I think that's what got me an agent. And then Amanda, my agent, had a few changes. In fact, Rose was originally a sex worker, which kind of adjust it, which kind of makes her character is pretty ballsy, and it suited her.
Yeah.
We decided no, because sex workers and all the themes that were coming up because of that are completely different books. So I'm going to save that for another time. And I just thought, no, let's make her much more like an average woman, where she has met a guy and then she has to get home and there's no transport. So that made it much more relatable. That changed. The scene in the pub, actually, with those guys in the suitcase, and that was my editor who was like, give her one more thing. And I was like, really? She's gone for enough. I know, one more. So I gave her that. Give her another trauma. And then the ending, it was actually my editor that changed the ending. Without giving too much away. Yeah, I can't tell you without it, because I'll give it away. But anyway, the ending changed, whether she had or not, or whatever. It was literally just 1 or 2 sentences, and he said if you change that, it just adds much more poignancy. You know, the futility, put it that way. I think
I just said that I've written down in my notes that ending. We can't really talk about it, but whoa. That's all I can say.
I will DM you. Yeah, he was like, "Can you tell me what your alternative ending was?" Yeah. But yeah, a lot of people are like, "What happens next? What happens next? Is there a sequel?" I said, no, God, I've written enough thinking series. Let me just do standalone. And I'm not writing a sequel. And then, of course, with the TV stuff, we did discuss that, because if and when it goes ahead, a lot of these things take a long time, and sometimes they don't even happen. They don't get green light. But if it does go ahead, and if it's successful, and there's a second season, I need to know what happens next. So I am thinking of what I would, she is, what's happening, what about the other characters, how has society changed because of that, and the wider picture. So I know what happens next in my head.
That's good, because I mean, if we ever need to know because of, like you say, a second series, or I guess it would be, you would, if you didn't want to write another book, but if you wanted it to be continued as a second series, that's possible as well. You don't necessarily have to write another book. You could just have this,
Don't get me wrong, if this becomes a massive international bestseller and people are begging me to write another book and I'm going to get paid those money, I'll write another book. I know what happens next. It'll be easy. I just got other stories that I want to give some air to.
There's a question that's just popped up and I can't find it. You could pull so Mia said you could pull a Taylor Jenkins Reid and write separate books, but put them in the same universe, which is a bit fantasy-esque, isn't it, having universes?
I know, but actually I do like to do that just as a little Easter egg, just a little bit of a joke for myself. I am actually thinking of the book I'm writing at the moment. There's no reason why they can't switch the news over and see that something specific is happening in Trafalgar Square, or we'll just make a reference to it so we're all living in the same world, but just for my own amusement. It's not going to move the plot along. And yeah, no, Sarah Jenkins, Taylor Jenkins Reid does that with her characters, doesn't she? A lot of writers, I think Marianne Keyes does that as well. Her books of the same family, which is fun. Which is fun to do. I don't know. I haven't done it yet because my books are very theme led. They're all very things that happen to women. So it starts off with a theme and a struggle that a woman goes through, and then I just chuck in a couple of murders.
So have you written book 2? Is that done? And
nearly. I mean, I'm on the 3rd round of edits, and then my agent and my editor, and we'll see what happens, and hopefully that will be out in the world. I don't know yet. I haven't, I'm not in contract. I don't know. But it's completely different, and I'm not allowed to talk about it.
I was going to say, can you tell us anything about it? No.
I'm desperate. I'm desperate to talk about the one I've been writing for the last year, not the one I wrote 2 years ago. But it's much more about mothers and daughters, and it's about women, the loss of sexual power and looks as you get older, as well as the discovery of it when you're a teenager. So it's that juxtaposition of female power, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, that with, you know, the sort of as women get older, and the difference between women getting older and men getting older is very, very different.
Yeah, look at Bruce. I was watching Bruce Springsteen's stuff, 73, and I thought, okay, yeah, you still got it.
Yeah.
Although, mind you, Blondie's 70 odd, and she's still up on stage being awesome. So.
Well, and Tina Turner didn't she, for years, and
yeah,
Shirley
yeah,
Bassey,
yeah.
you know, so yeah, so I mean, there are ones out there, but
there are some exceptions. I think it's getting better now. I think society is accepting older women standing in their power. There's some really strong movies coming out, like the one with Emma Thompson. Was it Good Luck to You? I can't remember that. It was a long title. Leo something, which is all about her discovering her sexual power, but once she's widowed in her 60s.
Right. I don't think I've heard
Somebody
of
can
that
tell
one.
me in the comments.
Yes.
Here's to you, Leo Grand. I think it's called Here's to You, Leo Grand, or
Somebody will
Thank You, Leo
tell
Grand.
us. Somebody will
Yeah.
Google it
And
for
it was
us.
really, really fascinating. It was one of those art house movies, but it was really brilliant and really brave of her, because she plays a woman in her late 60s who's basically never had a sexually fulfilling relationship. She's been married to one guy who really didn't care about her needs, so she hires a rent boy, but they end up having this kind of symbiotic relationship because they learn a lot from each other. And it's really not about sex, it's about gaining confidence and body positivity. I thought it was a really brave movie. And my characters, they're not that age. You know, he's a bit older than me, so I want to write that. I think experiences that are more lived. But yeah, I thought that was really interesting. Like, how do women cope when they're watching their teenagers going through things? And
yeah, I've just been through 3 teenagers, so that's you know.
Mine are on the cusp. They're 12 or 14. That's fun enough. Although I'm writing a very unhappy character. So I keep remember saying, it's not me. It's not me and my husband. This isn't happening to me. Not everything I write is me. I just take some experiences. A lot of it is from what my friends talk to me about. And what I see on TikTok.
The teenage years are much worse than the toddler years. Everybody thinks the toddler years are bad until you hit the teen ones, and they're much worse.
Mine are okay so far. I'm waiting for the shit to hit the fan. So far, they're just about manageable. We'll see.
Mia's. I'm hoping I'm saying it right. It's Mia. It looks like Mia. I'm saying it as I read it. This might be too much of a deep dive, but how similar or different is M from Ella? I'm not sure who Ella is.
Oh yeah, Ella. I know Mia follows me on Twitter, and I know she's been reading my fantasy series.
I wondered whether she was one of your fantasy characters.
Yeah, Ella's the protagonist in my Pathkeeper series, and I would say actually there are a bit of similarities, because she does suffer some level of abuse. Maybe I'm just writing the same character over and over again. No, Ella's a lot younger, and I think less repressed, just more naive, and I think that would be the difference. Or Maya. Sorry, Maya. To ask actually, Maya. Yeah, I've never known how to pronounce it. Yeah. So I do tend to write quite misguided, naive, or at least repressed women who come into their own and find their confidence. So there's a lot of that, but the characters do change with the other books I've got in mind, though. But there might be some similarities actually between Em and Ella. I'm sure you can write an essay about it, Maya. She wrote an essay about it. She was quizzing me about it.
I love it when that happens, when some people become so involved in that. It's like it must be really flattering if you get someone who or people they get so engrossed in your world. It must be fantastic.
Yeah, it's lovely. It's really flattering and humble. I had one reader get a feather tattoo because of my series. Fantasy fans are like completely different to the thriller readers. They really get sucked into that world. So what was it? Good Luck to You, Leo Grand was the movie. Yeah, that was a really good exploration of female sexuality. But it's been a completely different experience, and I'm very excited that I'm now writing thrillers as Natali Simmonds, because it gives me the opportunity to tackle some really big themes and to go a bit more unflinching.
Yeah.
It's fantasy tends to attract more younger audience. Maybe they can't relate, and I really like people to read my books and go, whoa, okay, she went there. Some of the themes I'm addressing are quite raw, quite unapologetic in my other thrillers.
Yeah, I think I mean, you're not afraid to say what you think, are you, in the book? You know, you're not afraid to be quite very honest, very, you know, as it, you know, I think some people when they write will skirt around, you know, certain words or themes, but you're
swearing.
You know, yeah.
Sorry about that. There's not as much swearing in the second book. It's probably why it wasn't out in the US quickly. I'm like, oops. But I just didn't think that two people in the situation that they're in, it was mainly Rose that swears, but two people in that heat with all the crap that's going on around them would be saying old fiddlesticks. They just wouldn't. They would be swearing. I'd be swearing.
Exactly.
And also Londoners, I don't know, they swear a lot more than other people, and Spanish people swear a lot more than Brits. So, yeah, I think the next book's slightly less sweary, but there's some bits in it that are just a bit uncomfortable and make you question things. And I think Vic's asking as well, would you ever write horror romance for another genre? Yeah, but maybe not for now. I mean, paranormal romance and fantasy romance I've written. The Pathkeeper is very spoony. It's like it's a forbidden romance with past lives. You know, Romeo and Juliet meets angels, and it's twilighty, maybe not as teeny. It's a bit more adult and very sexy. A lot of sex scenes. And then the Cadis Night books that I write are very smutty, like really they're funny. They're co-written with Jacqueline Sylvester. She's one of the funniest people I know. So very funny, very smutty, very daft. You know, she's a bisexual witch investigator for the dark web, which is the blood web, and she goes on all these adventures to discover paranormal crime, and each book is a different place in the world with a different paranormal monster, and she basically sleeps with them all. So yes, there's a lot of romance there, but it's pure fun and escapism, and I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to write all these different genres, really, because I don't really want to be serious and angry in every book I write. I don't want to be sexy in every book I write, you know. And I've written 2 middle grade books, co-wrote them with another author, and they didn't get very far. They did go out and sub, and we did have some publishers interested, but they didn't make it. And they were fun as well, because it's actually really lovely to tap into that, you know, child inside you. So I don't know what genres I'm going to write one day.
No, well, I think paranormal romance or paranormal fantasy, you know, sort of almost a bit, you know, like Sarah J. Maas, you know, is massive, isn't it, at the moment? It's absolutely huge. And I think
I didn't go quite as, sometimes she's really full on.
Yeah. But I think it was a bit like, I mean, like I sort of in Twilight was, you know, that was a lot tamer. But I think it gets younger people reading, which for me is always like a massive, you know, worked in a library for years, so it's great, you know, to see kids coming in and wanting the big book, you know, whatever the big book will be. So I think
brilliant. I don't know what my kids read. Well, I don't know. My youngest is really into kind of romance books, but I'm really encouraging her to. She's reading a lot of LGBT books at the moment. I'm brilliant. She likes kind of sapphic books and stuff. And I'm like, okay, awesome. And then I bought her all the ones that TikTok are talking about. And then somebody, I showed the picture on Twitter, and someone's like, that one's incredibly racy. And I was like, oh, and I flicked through and I thought, that might be just a little bit too graphic. Romance, lovely. Snogging, that's fine. But like, full on, no, okay. So like, I don't believe in, you know, in stopping my kids from reading what they want, but I'll read that one first.
As a teenager who read Jackie Collins and Shirley Conran and all those sorts of smutty books on the bus, I can say nothing about what we read.
My 14-year-old friends love all the like Clean Hoover, and they love all the Sarah J. Maas and stuff. And I keep saying they'll love the Pathkeeper. She's like, they don't read your books. I'm like, why? Because my mum wrote the sex scenes. It's like, I don't like it. And that's weird. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. What if I just cover it up with post-it notes and say like, turn to page 39?
I don't think it's a spoiler, but yeah, no, maybe it is. Actually, I won't say that. I'll say that to you. But I was just thinking about M and how she changes I think is a safe way to say it. You know, how she's, you know, starts off as one thing and then ends up very differently, you know, portrayed, you know, um, you know, the people who have read it will know what I mean. People who haven't read it will have to go and read it because it's really good. But I found that really fascinating, how she becomes a completely different person to what she starts off with, and that's, you know, for partly for what she goes through. But was that always the intention? Did you want her to, you know, that strength to build? And
yeah, well, because I thought, okay, because I wanted that falling down
yeah, moment. Yeah,
concept, right? Yeah, of like she's gonna snap. But then I thought,
yeah,
what does the snap look like? It has to
yeah.
be a big snap, right? It can't just be like, and then she shouts at you or something. So
No.
I wanted to show how, and it's literally stated in the book, how it's the small things. It's that straw that, you know, broke the camel's back. It's
Yeah,
the little things. It's not the big things. You can lose your job, okay, you can deal with that. You
yeah,
can maybe lose a loved one, and there's coping mechanisms. Maybe they're not the things that are going to completely change your life. Sometimes it's the small thing, that one little comment, or that the fact that her
yeah,
suitcase is broken. She's trying to travel across London with a bloody
yeah,
broken suitcase the whole time, and then she's just going to lose it. And I really wanted to explore what that looked like, and I also wanted to explore the concept of how society accepts somebody for what they've done, and how one person could do one thing and it can be viewed by so many in so many different ways.
yeah.
Because I don't believe there's one right or wrong about anything. I
No,
don't believe that, you know, anyone can be everything. Lots of different people. We're all lots of different people at once. And I don't think she wanted to be the person who becomes at the end anyway. I don't think anyone
no.
would want that level of attention. But then there's a point in it where she says, I didn't ask for this, and Rose says, you did. And then
Yeah.
you're like, no, you did. There was a part of you that did want this. There was a part of you. So that was really fun to explore.
No, I really like that, and I think thrillers aren't usually moving, and I felt quite moved by some of her story. And I saw, when I was looking through, when I was doing my research, that other people felt, actually, you know, actually brought them to tears, some of her story. You know, which is quite unusual for, you know, for a thriller. I can't remember another thriller where I've actually felt empathy. You know, there's so much that you can feel for her. I don't know what to sort of, yeah, I mean, there's so many feelings that you go through for her, with her. I think it's because you're with her all the way through that you almost, you know, you're almost like sat on her back, aren't you, as she goes through it.
Yeah, you
So
feel like you are her. Yeah, and it was hard to write it as well. I write very, very visually.
yeah,
So for me, I basically describe what I see in my head, but I'm incredibly, yeah, I have beyond my imagination is more than just visual. I smell, I can see, I can touch. So for me, I may as well be there. Good fun when you're writing romance scenes as well. But no, I'm literally there. I can feel her phone in her hand. I can feel the heat on me. So I physically react when I'm writing. And I cried my eyes out when I wrote the bridge scene. Really
yeah.
soft. I also cried my eyes out when I wrote Nikki in the lion scene. Found that really touching.
Oh yeah, I think that was, yeah, I think for me that was, you know, that sort of, yeah, I thought that was amazing. That this was, obviously we haven't talked about Nikki, but if you read the book, you all know about. Yeah, I think Vicky's saying every single bit you can imagine. I really felt it was a visual book as I read it. I could picture that, you know, the Trafalgar Square. I could picture her going into, breaking into the, you know, everything I could see. And I think that works so well for me as a thriller. I was completely engrossed by it. So
I'm glad that came across,
yeah,
because I
definitely.
was writing as if I was describing the movie in my head. And the scene, I was really moved by the movie Joker, and that
Yeah,
scene at the end.
yeah,
There's a riot,
yeah.
and he's just like, he just doesn't care. Like
No,
I love exploring that concept of like, you have lost everything, so you're actually finally free. Who are you going to be?
yeah,
I think that's really interesting, right? And that is who she is at the end. She's just like, I've got nothing left to care about, so
yeah.
I can go for it. And that in itself is really liberating.
I'm just looking at the time, so just before we finish, do you have a favourite writer?
You know, that's such a difficult thing to say.
or writers?
Yeah, I mean, oh, God, I'm not prepared. I don't know. I'm really fussy. No, it's the same with songs. Somebody was like, "Who are your favorite artists?" I'm like, I have favorite songs for different occasions and
Yeah.
and I don't know. I mean, I tend to like the kind of books that make me feel incredibly uncomfortable. And that doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to go on and read all their books because I love everything they've ever written.
Yeah.
But the kind of books that have stayed with me, for instance, are like We Need to Talk About Kevin, or My Dark Vanessa, or Tampa. Can't remember the writer for that one. Just really big themed books where you go, ooh, she went there with that one. They all tend to be female. But I'll have to come back to you on that one, actually, because I don't have any there are some authors where I buy all their books just because I know they're going to be fun and great, like Simon James Green. I love his teen YA books, so he's always got his comedic, problematic gay young boys, and I read them because they're a lovely escape and they're fun. So I know whatever book he's got coming out, I'll buy it because it's fun.
Well, you can always tell us tomorrow on Twitter. What
Let me have a little look at my bookshelf and see what I've got the most of, because I'm not one of those people that just automatically buys a book just because somebody's written it. I tend to go by theme.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. So what time are you on Twitter tomorrow night? Is it 7:30 or is it 7? Vicky,
let me have a look. I've got 7:30 here.
So 7:30 tomorrow evening. You can join Natali and Vicky, I believe. Is it you, Vicky? She'll type up in a minute. Come on, Vic, reply to me. Over on Twitter, on our Squadpod Twitter feed. So if you have any questions that you haven't asked tonight, or if you have anybody who you think would like to find out more about the book,
Alyssa Nutting, you're right, that is the tab.
It is her, yes.
Great, she's bringing in. She's like my man on the ground, you know.
Thanks, she's like my in the earpiece, yeah. Thanks, Vic. Yeah, so Vic will be here tomorrow night with Natali from 7:30 over on Twitter. So if you've got any questions, please join us then, where we'll be talking even more about My Beautiful Proof, which I love the pin.
Yeah, that's the kind of girly version. This is the sweatier version that matches my red sweaty face right now. Well, at least tomorrow I'll be able to do that in my pajamas in front of a fan. I couldn't put my fan on because of the noise. So I look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great. And yes, the book's out on Thursday.
It's on Kindle. It's out on Kindle and audio already.
Oh,
so if anyone's absolutely desperate,
so you've got no excuse.
Been out for a while now.
Yeah, so you've got no excuse if you want to read it now. You could start it now and finish it by midnight. Right,
exactly, you will. So if nobody wants to sleep tonight, if nobody likes sleeping, pick up my book. I always get nervous when people tag me like, it's 9 p.m, I'm going to sit down and read my book. I'm like, you're not sleeping tonight.
No, don't do that. You're just going to have to gallop through it. So, so is it sorry, I keep saying her name wrong. Maya. Yeah. She says, look at your nails matching your book. That's very nice. Yes.
It was interesting because I speak English and Spanish fluently, but my nail technician only speaks Cantonese and Dutch. And me trying to explain that I was a writer, and because she was like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "They have to match my cover." Anyway, we did that.
You could have you could go, but so you could do proof one week and cover next week. So because I mean that
exactly. I should have gone for the pink, shouldn't I? As well, more like.
No, it's a very nice colour. Well, good luck, and are you doing anything on Thursday for the launch? Are you?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm flying to London, so I'm in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm flying to London Wednesday, and then on Thursday, which is the launch, I'll be mainly online because obviously a lot of people talking and sharing, and I've got some announcements to make and stuff. And then that evening, I'm actually having a private party with mainly authors, actually, and TV people and publishers. It's very a lot of people are coming, and I'm going to be wearing an absolutely ridiculously over-the-top dress, and there's going to be tapas and music, and it's going to be the opposite of any other book event because I can be a bit extra like that. But then on Saturday, so yeah, you'll see about that. You'll be like, oh wow. And then on Saturday, I'm at Enfield Waterstones, so Enfield in North London, and I'll be doing a signing. Yeah, I'd love to see people there. I'll be doing a signing from 11 till 1. I'll be signing the hardcover. And then I will be hopefully the rest of the week while I'm in London just going around all the bookshops and seeing if there are any bookshops that are stocking the book that I can sign cover. So just follow me on Twitter, NJ Simmonds Books, so at NJ Simmonds Books, and you'll see what I'm up to. But I've got a very busy week ahead, so
can't wait to see the dress. I'm going to be tuning in on Thursday to see that one.
It's ridiculous. My husband was just like, "What? He can't make. He's coming over on the weekend with the kids because they've got school and everything." So I'm going. He's like, "You're going to wear that?" So it's like a wedding day, but just for me and my book. It's just all the attention is on me. It's very dramatic.
Well, have a good rest of your evening. Go and have a cold drink and a fan. And
thanks, Telsa. There's a message there from Telsa. She's another great author, by the way.
Yeah, she loves it. Yeah. So if you haven't read it, read it. And if you have read it, you'll know exactly what we've all been talking about. And that ending, whoa. Yeah.
Tell your friends. That's the only way this book's ever going to get anywhere. Tell your friends. Go to bookshops and ask them. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
See ya.